Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we're going to talk about Series 11 of Doctor Who. We're going to talk about how Series 11 tries to be good, and how it has some good ideas that just don't quite get executed well. Now, I have talked about Series 11 before, and of course I am talking about Series 11 of modern Doctor Who, not Season 11 of classic Doctor Who. I've said before many times, I think Series 11 is the worst series in all of Doctor Who. I think it's the weakest. I think it has no masterpieces and only a couple decent edging into good stories. It's really bad for a multitude of reasons, which I've outlined in other videos. But there are some ideas here that were good ideas. Things Chris Chibnall wanted to do with the show that he tried to implement in his initial season that I like. One, Chris Chibnall, I like the fact he wanted to do a season without any classic villains. I like that. It can work. I know a lot of people complained when Series 11 came out about not having any classic villains. But a lot of us were tired of seeing the classic villain. I'm tired of seeing the Daleks. Now, to be fair, Chris Chibnall did a really good job with the Daleks. I talked about that recently in another video. And Chris Chibnall actually does a pretty good job with classic Who villains for the most part. But leading up into Series 11, especially through the Moffat era, I was just kind of sick and tired of classic villains coming back and not living up to their standard. Usually, the Ice Warriors appearances were really good, but that's because they weren't overly used. The Daleks had gotten old, the Cybermen had gotten practically ruined. I like what had been done with Missy, but that's the exception. The Sontarans had literally been made into a joke, and I use literally the main way it's supposed to be used there. As in, Strax was a jokey, humorous character. They had been made into a joke. So I like the fact that Chris Chibnall wanted to do a series trying to break away from classic Who villains and to do brand new villains. Unfortunately, a lot of these villains ended up being uninteresting or generic, or they're not memorable. And this can be done. You can do an entire season of Doctor Who without any returning villains, all original villains. It's been done before. The best season of Doctor Who ever made, in my opinion, objectively, did that. And that, of course, is season 13 of the classic series. All new villains. And I think Sutekh is still probably the best one-off villain Doctor Who has ever had. The Zygons were in that one. Morbius was in that one. The Krynoids were in that one. The creature, which really wasn't a villain, from Planet of Evil was in that one. The villains they fought in the Android Invasion was in that one. It's such a good season with all original villains. It doesn't coast on the Daleks or the Cybermen or the Master. So it can be done. Series 11 just doesn't execute that properly. Another thing I like is that the companions are just normal people. They're not special, and they don't have to have this heartbreaking departure. It doesn't have to be a big deal. One doesn't have to die to leave. I like the idea that it tried to go back to having multiple members in the TARDIS, a lot like 60s Who. Now that doesn't work, and we'll come to that. But I like the fact they tried to do it, and I like the fact that each one of the companions, Graham, Ryan, and Yaz, seem like just regular people. They're not interwoven with the Doctor's past or a vital part of the Doctor's life, more so than any other companion. And I like when Graham and Ryan left, it was just kind of a regular leaving. Ryan had gotten used to life back on Earth. He didn't want to leave that. And Graham left because he wanted to be with his grandson. I like that. That's a great companion departure. They milk it a little bit in the actual episode, but that's bad writing. The concept is good. There's a couple other things I like. My mind is kind of blanking on. I enjoyed those two dynamics a lot, though. I like the fact that some of the episodes, even though they're not executed well, feel like Doctor Who episodes, like the one with the frog. In concept, Was that It Takes You Away? Is that the name of it? The concept is there. There's a concept at the very core of that story that's a good concept. And it feels like a Doctor Who concept of, another type of universe or dimension or whatever that is a sentient thing that's lonely that can't interact with our universe or they'll destroy each other or something like that. The concept of that is very Doctor Who. The execution of it is absolutely atrocious and stupid. But the concept is fascinating. To me, that's where Series 11 falls short, is the execution of a lot of these stories, because a lot of the stories just are not good. I like The Ghost Monument for reasons I've talked about before. I remember enjoying Kerblam, but I've never gone back and rewatched it, but I liked it on first viewing. And I enjoyed Demons of the Punjab, which seems to be more of a Yaz episode, but I feel like I get more character development from Yaz's grandmother, the younger version of her, than I do from Yaz. And you don't get necessarily a lot of character development from the companions, because the problem is, while it wants to be 60s Doctor Who with this TARDIS team, 60s Doctor Who was a different time. Television was slower back then. It moved at a different pace. It had more time for character development. And that's not necessarily something a younger modern audience is more inclined to watch. They want something a little more fast-paced. And the problem with Series 11 is that when you only have 45 minutes per episode, you're not having enough time to develop 3 companions. Because in Classic Who, you had these longer serials, and they still did a lot of them. Keep in mind, 60s Doctor Who had 40 episodes a season on average. Around 40 a season, right there. And they were spread across serials that might be 4 parts, 6 parts, longer, 10 parts, 12 parts. So you had time for that character development throughout the story for the main characters. Whereas in Series 11, you have 45 minutes, and in that time you have to start the story, introduce guest characters, try to give a little character growth to guest characters, have the crisis point of the story where everything goes wrong, and then you have to kind of resolve the story, oftentimes with a Deus Ex Machina. There's not much time left in there for character development. We get a little bit of it. We do get a little bit of it. We get the friendship between Ryan and Yaz, which never really goes anywhere, to be honest. We get the relationship between Yaz and Ryan, which is nice, and that's developed decently. And of course, I still feel like Graham is the best developed of the 3 in Series 11, but still not as much development as these 60s characters, because television is just done differently now. So, and then you had the episodes themselves, which just came across as dumb. I'd never liked Tim Shaw as a villain as much. He doesn't. Again, you have a lot of uninteresting villains. The villain from Rosa is not memorable in any way. The series finale is a dud. It's just a dud. It's boring. It's uninteresting. And then even in It Takes You Away, the thing talking to her is a frog. It's weird. I mean, it's kind of Doctor Who, but it's still weird. I don't connect with most of these episodes. They're just not executed well. And then, of course, you have the potential argument that it's trying very hard to push a particular message. Whatever word you want to use for it, if you want to say woke or the message or the agenda or whatever. And I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it isn't. I don't really dive into that as much on my channel. I think if you want to make the argument that it is, then I think you could make a valid argument on that. From the way the Doctor's dressed with her rainbow shirt and suspenders. You have Rosa, of course, a big political episode there. The man being pregnant in another episode. The dad running off and It Takes You Away. But to be fair, in my opinion, there's no one single episode that by itself that I just sit there and I feel like I'm necessarily being preached to. Rosa, a little bit, but that's more just because I'm from the southern United States, so it does some things that I've talked about in other videos that kind of bothers me. Because to me, Rosa is very much that episode that's like, the moral of the episode is that racism is bad. And it does that by showing southern people of the time in a very caricaturist, two-dimensional, stereotypical way, which I find racist. So basically, for me, the whole the whole thing of Rosa at the end of it was an episode that says racism is bad, and it does it by having what I consider to be very racist characterizations of people. I find Rosa to be a bit racist, to be quite honest, as someone who's born in Mississippi, raised in Mississippi, lived in Mississippi, etc., etc. Now, I can understand someone in Britain not taking it that way, and you might have learned a very significant part of American history. That is an important thing to know about. But the execution of it, as someone who's from there and has family who was raised in that time, it can come off a bit racist, which bothers me, especially for an episode where the moral seems to be that racism is bad. But no one episode I point to and go, the message. But now, if you look at the series as a whole, I can see where people would make the argument, where they seem like they're pushing a little too hard, where it's a little in your face. I can see the argument for that. But I'm not here to debate whether I think that is, whether I think that isn't. That it's not my issue with Series 11. My issue with Series 11 is just that these stories are uninteresting. The Sananga conundrum, I don't really care for it. I feel like the little Patin creature, like they were trying to do their own version of Baby Yoda. It doesn't work. I don't find it interesting. Arachnids in the UK. Blah. Blah. That's definitely one of the top 10 worst episodes of Doctor Who of all time. The Doctor doesn't even make sense in it. She berates the Trump guy, who's very obviously supposed to be a Trump guy. Why British television is trying to do something talking about Trump, I have no idea. But he's shooting the spider, which is a quick death, and she's like, no, you can't do that, that's inhuman. Instead, the Doctor wants to let it, suffocate to death. Much better way to die. Much more, slow and gruesome. So the Doctor's weird in this, and didn't she just trap a bunch of spiders in a room to blow them up? I don't know, I haven't gone back and watched it again, because quite frankly, I'd rather stab out my eyes. Okay, maybe not quite that, but yeah, I really don't want to watch that. I'd rather watch The Gunfighters, Power of Prowl, and Web Planet all on a marathon through each other at once than ever watch Arachnids in the UK again. And that's a bold thing to say. Yeah, it's some bleh episodes. But, as I mentioned, some of the core ideas were there. I really got on a tangent of why Series 11 sucks when I was trying to talk about the things it did right. But I like the idea. I like the idea of no villains. I like the idea of multiple companions that aren't vital to the safety of us all. They're just companions, like in Classic Who, and when they leave, they leave. I like that. I like that Yaz hadn't developed her little thing for the Doctor yet, because that feels so contrived, but that's later in the run. I don't know. I feel like Series 11 had a couple good things, but I feel like the backlash to Series 11 was so bad that Chibnall kind of 180 on some of the stuff he did in Series 12, which I like a lot of Series 12. I've talked about that before. But if there's one thing I'll give the Doctor in Series 11, I have a lot of issues with the 13th Doctor, the writing, and to be honest, a lot of the times, Whittaker's portrayal of the 13th Doctor. And I like Whittaker as an actress. I've seen her in other stuff. But a lot of times her actions and her lines just don't ring quite true with me. But I will give her that in Series 11, she was at least pretty self-confident. She is in most of the run. Even in her pilot, when she's facing down Tim Shaw in her first episode, she's pretty confident. Now leave this planet while you still have a choice. She's pretty confident there. And she is throughout most of Series 11. It's not until after Spyfall, when Gallifrey's destroyed, she kind of becomes insecure and full of self-doubt and feels like she's 37 steps behind everybody else. While I much prefer Series 11 I much prefer Series 12 to Series 11, I actually like that in Series 11 the Doctor felt a little more like the Doctor confidence-wise. So I'll give her that. But at the end of the day, there are some good ideas and good concepts in Series 11 that just ultimately weren't realized well and weren't executed well, and it resulted in a series that is bad, is very, very bad for the most part. Again, I can go back and watch Ghost Monument, and I do need to watch Kerblam again, to be honest. But for the most part, it's just a huge steaming pile of Chibnall. So that's my thoughts on that. A couple things I did like. There was a couple other things I wanted to talk about, and they've slipped my mind. There were at least one or two more things I liked in concept about Series 11 that didn't quite work out in the end. So I want to know what you think. What do you think of Series 11? Do you think there was any good ideas behind Series 11? Maybe concepts, ideas that just weren't executed well. So if you can think of anything positive you like about Series 11, let me know down in these series. Let me down in the comments below. Other things to do, click the like button and the subscribe button and the bell for notifications so you never miss out on another video. I just hit 800 subscribers today. Very excited about that. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you. I very much appreciate that. It's so much fun watching the channel grow and hitting another milestone like that. It's very exciting. If you do watch my channel a lot and haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and click that subscribe button. That helps me out, and it's free. You can't beat free, and it helps me beat that YouTube algorithm, and I love doing that. I also have a Patreon. If you really like what I do and would like to support what I do and help finance what I do, there is a link to my Patreon down in the description below. Anyone that joins at any tier level gets a free video request. I've got a couple of those I'm behind on. I got to work on that. So check that out. I always enjoy watching that counter go up as well, of course. I also have a P.O. box that's down in the description below if there's anything you would like to send me to review. And I have a link to my Amazon wish list down there as well. I update that regularly. Most importantly, I want to give a shout out to two of my top tier patrons, Stephen Crane and the Fifth Doctor, as well as a thank you to all of my patrons. I appreciate each and every one of you. And also, most importantly, thank you for watching.